Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Rachel.
Hey, y'all.
And Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Hi.
Very unenthusiastic today, Alex. You doing okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
He's tired. He had to carry that weight in here.
Oh, yeah.
Took a lot out of him.
Yeah, if you're watching, if you're only listening, you can't see this giant weight on the table.
It's a kettlebell.
A kettlebell.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shame you with proper terms.
Keep shaming me. That's a teaser for later.
Yep.
No, yes. Later on today, we will be talking about. I was supposed to write down a title that you gave me earlier, Alex, and then I didn't do that. And so all I have here
typed it in.
All I have is health. Oh, there it is. Is physical health a spiritual issue? Yeah. Teaser. Everybody, get ready for that. Recently on Twitter, a little while ago, there was a hashtag that was trending. That hashtag was "I'm over it." So I think we should spend just a little bit of time verbally tweeting right now what we're hashtag over it. I'm hashtag over Husker football. It's just, I'm over it.
Oh, wow.
Are we going to go around like no explanation?
Yeah.
Just like keep going around.
It's done. It's over. We didn't get a choice in being over it or not.
It's over it.
Sad.
Still fighting for it. I'm not over it, but that's not. It's not. I'm not over it. So you guys.
It's hashtag Big 12.
Yeah. Hashtag Big 12.
I think I am over Facebook. I'm just over it. Every time I get on now, it's just like so annoying just to see what people are writing. Like, I'm just like, this just makes me angry to get on now. I used to like come on and see like sweet pictures of kids or, fun updates
New
of life
puppies.
Now it's just really frustrating. So I'm over Facebook.
I'm going to hitch my wagon to that one. To that hashtag. Is that a thing you can do?
Sure. You can do whatever you want.
Jess, you were ready to tell us know
I don't know. I'm over lots of things.
Okay, do we need to start a list? Bulleted list?
I'm over like never getting a nap.
Oh.
Ever.
An app?
A nap.
Like an appetizer?
Like a nap.
Oh.
Like I used to take like
Nap.
great naps, and now it's like
You don't get them.
being a parent.
Yeah.
You get naps?
I do not get naps.
Yeah, see? I'm over it.
Yeah, and my husband and I we both took like a 2-hour nap yesterday and just
I'm over that.
About it.
I'm over that, Rachel.
Over at.
Did you have more to go or your list? Like, I didn't want to stop you if you had a list.
I'm over like, I don't know, cracks in concrete that you trip over.
Oh.
Is this turning into like a what grinds my gears segment?
Oh yeah, that's not what we're doing?
Oh, we should make that. That would be a good segment.
Okay, next week we should do that.
I'm over potholes.
Winter's coming.
Yeah.
I'm over at hashtag copy paste and like just group messages. In general, where like either somebody like copied and pasted something from their friend's page and they posted it on social media, or like I just get a group message, especially group messages where there's like a green bubble, because then there's the people that don't understand. They like it, that you can do the iPhone like it or heart it or whatever. And then it says, this person liked it. And then you're just like, come on.
It comes through as a text, yeah.
Don't you know you're in a green bubble text? Don't like it?
Yeah.
He's getting heated.
I know.
Sorry.
I'm that person that causes that in those messages.
But it's okay to like be in a, I have love for people that.
But when you do that, it just sends more and more messages instead of just doing the.
To be clear, we're talking about Android versus iPhone.
Yeah. It's not that I hate Android users. It's like I think the fault is actually on Apple users.
Are you Android?
Yeah.
It's the fault is on Apple users that don't understand they're in an Android
Apple users.
and Apple conversation and they like it, and you're like,
come on, you're not the only people in the world.
Yeah,
Let's
seriously.
get over
This
ourselves.
is like a boys versus girls table right here.
I have the Google Pixel.
Yeah, that's what I have too.
All right.
So
This episode
Android.
brought to you by.
Yeah.
I don't. It is. You're saying that it should be a common courtesy for our iPhone users. Just don't do the like thing.
Yeah.
Don't do the hard press.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
or mainly just group threads.
just completely get rid of those. Okay.
I feel like people respond to like you're saying, when they don't want to type out a new text, but they're like, oh, I'm going to like it. So, I saw it and I support you.
Which
Right.
I appreciate that from another Apple user, but
Just
then
when you're,
yeah.
that made me just think that one thing I'm over is receiving emails from Pastor Mark asking me for money.
Oh, yes.
That's what I'm over.
Seriously.
He always
Okay,
wants,
somebody explain that.
He always wants like gift cards from eBay
Yeah,
or Best Buy,
yeah.
and then I spend like thousands of dollars.
Right.
On them.
He's like, I really need your help. Like,
And it's rubbed off on Myron and Jim because now they're both emailing me saying, and they are always in a meeting. They're always in a meeting. Like, hey,
Text me.
man, I can't get out of this meeting right now, but
Yeah.
we really need help.
we need $1,000 in Best Buy gift cards.
in
Yes.
eBay.
Right now.
quickly.
Yes.
No, if that's been a thing that's to inform you, Jess. It's specifically, I think, tied to our. You should get them though.
Oh,
because-
yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
I just said for people listening.
Yeah,
like, they're
okay.
just like,
I thought you were asking. I was like,
oh, no,
for
I'm
money.
getting them.
I'm leaving this church. Pastor Mark's asking
No.
me.
He's not asking me. What?
to clarify for people listening who are not do not have an @cccomaha.org email address. A lot of spammers like to send us messages
Ghosting us, Mark.
it's like mark.ashton.5599421
Yeah.
So anyways, although I did get a spam email from someone whose name was Mark Austin, and it looked much more legitimate, and it was about something completely differently, but it spooked me. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Another one.
What did I?
They're trying everything. Voicemails lately are the thing that they're trying to get us in on. So,
Yeah.
watch out.
It's a dangerous place out there. So there was one more thing I was going to say.
What are you
that
over,
I'm
Eric?
over, and that's this banter segment of the podcast.
Oh.
Up next is headlines. All right, our first headline today is from Omaha.com. If you're listening to this and you're not from the Omaha area, surprise, we're from Omaha. And a big thing about Omaha, about our culture is that we bleed red, but it's different red than the rest of people. It's Husker red.
Go big red.
Go big red.
Oh, here we go. I just released a bunch of balloons in the room. If you're
Kraken.
watching, you know that's a lie.
No, not the latex.
Husker parents have written a letter. I'm assuming that this was a collaborative effort. They have written a letter they're kind of seeking answers from the Big Ten and Kevin Warren. Because if you're not familiar with what's going on, which if you're not in Omaha, you might not know, but it's happening across the country with other college football teams that they're postponing here, at least they're postponing the season till the spring. This has been it's kind of funny to me because I got to say that a lot of people who have been very strong throughout COVID going like, this is just proof that God's in control.
Put your head down.
God's in control and you're not in control. And then this happens and these same people are like on their knees crying like, oh no, what happened to my football? And so
That hurts me.
Are you talking about Alex?
Yeah, I was subtweeting Alex.
Alex?
Just now.
Yes, thank you.
No, I'm not. No, I think but it does go further than that, right? When you see from the parents, there's a lot more to it than just the entertainment side of it. Obviously, a lot of people are very upset about not being entertained by Husker football. But when you're talking about the players and their families and like how this affects their time in college and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think we like answers. So, even more background on it. Like the Big Ten had released their schedule. They were moving forward, going to play a Big Ten schedule only, canceled every other game, and then a week later they just totally reversed decision. This is a pretty new commissioner to the league, and so they just totally reversed decision. They gave like health as a precaution, which I think people obviously they know, but didn't give like specific or site specific. This is the actual reason, and so and there's a lot of unclarity around that kind of stuff. In Nebraska, their coach, fans, players have been adamant, like, hey, we want to play, as are some other universities that are a part of this. So yeah, this coalition of parents It's like, hey, we want to play. And even the commissioner, his son is a college football player in the SEC, and his son will be able to play, this year. So they're like, well, if you think it's not safe for our sons to play and you're making that decision, are you going to like pull your son out of playing in another conference that's still playing? And so I think there's a lot of things that go into it as people are like considering the hypocrisy maybe and things like that. So,
a lot of these families though, it's like every Nebraska family's dream to have their like kid play for the Huskers. Like that's just kind of like, as far as I know, it's just,
and probably like kids that grew up in Nebraska playing football. Like,
so you get, they've waited their whole lives for this, and now it's like, okay, no, it's gonna,
I can't do it.
I think there was some, like one point they brought up is like, hey, I thought it was interesting that the letter actually, the way they acknowledged that football is a violent sport, like they kind of outright said that, and like they need time for their bodies to heal. So if they're going to play in the spring and then they got to play again in the fall, like that might not give them enough time to recoup. Like if they had a somewhat serious injury, which I thought that was that's a pretty good argument. And I think that the hard part of it is like how, everyone's kind of falling on different sides of this debate about the virus or about the disease. But it sounds like there's this willingness to just sacrifice their kids to the football.
Yeah.
If it means they're going to get sick, then
football's worth it.
It's worth it because they've been waiting their whole lives for this. So that if they can't play, then they might, whatever. Like we're the parents, and like we've invested time, money, and we've, the kids want to play. So it's just worth it. If they get sick, then I guess whatever, because football's more important. And that's kind of the tone that came off this letter in a way.
So that's what you got from it.
As I read it, but that's probably someone who's like I'm a Husker fan, but I'm not like super like diehard. So maybe that's,
you're not crying in the corner.
I guess not.
yeah.
I would assume that it affects more than just playing football, because to me it's like, okay, these kids are probably getting full rides. Did they get full rides? A lot of them are getting full rides. So it's like, is that going to affect your ability to go to school this year? That's affecting a family economically, because college is expensive. State it's expensive. And so I'm thinking like the economic repercussions of that for parents, that are they going to come to school and they're taking out loans or...
Right. Well, and even for the school, that's like tickets and like all that stuff people are not coming to see the game. They're not paying for tickets. Like I would imagine people are getting refunded for, and I'm sure that's a big source of income for.
I am not a season ticket holder, so I don't know that. But yeah, they gave that option for, but kind of put it out there like, hey, we will give you this, but here's the budget, here's how it's going to hurt us. And not just football, because it brings in so much money for scholarships outside of football. It brings in so much money to make the University of Nebraska or Ohio State, whatever,
Lincoln, the town
better. And so the whole entire infrastructures are, I think, built around these types of things. And I think the other part that's frustrating for parents outside of, they're saying outside of I'm sacrificing my kids to the football gods, is they're saying you're asking our kids to come to school. You're not saying that you're not closing down the university. So there's going to be all these people on campus. This is one of the safest bubbles created on campus. They're making wise choices. They're being protected and all this kind of stuff. So what happens to these kids that this is the safest place they've ever been, not just physically, but emotionally. It's the safest place.
What situations are they coming out of?
So even if you send them home, the coach is like, if we send these guys home, like we can provide food for them here. Like we can't just deliver them food every day, nutrition, all of these things that you sell a program on that are bigger than family, all those dynamics that are bigger than just getting your kid to the NFL. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just about that, but it's about so many ripple effects that are involved in it. Because even in Nebraska, yes, that's the dream of every Nebraska, but a minority of players are from Nebraska. They're from places all over the country. And so I think for me, it's some of the hypocrisy that they're demanding answers to, I feel like, which is like, why are you asking everyone to be in schools, all that kind of stuff, and just saying they can't play. And so it's those risks.
I think that they deserve answers, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that somebody responds to them. Who would be the responder? The commissioner?
Yeah, probably the commissioner. And so there's been a lot of schools.
Commissioner, if you're listening.
He's a big fan, I heard.
We would like some answers.
We'll even let you come on
we'd like to invite you to come
next
on and
week
discuss
and
this.
make the announcement.
I'll give up my chair just for that time.
Send an email to podcast at yeah, it's tough. It is. We are just like, I mean, even with seeing schools starting up and I mean, that I think that's probably their biggest like argument right there. Like what you mentioned is like, hey, you were expecting them to be in close proximity with each other in school, and like, why can't they play? So
I haven't even looked because I'm scared to look. But have they decided on basketball, like Creighton?
No, they're talking about a few bubble cities, maybe Omaha being one of them, to like replicate the NBA model that they've done, which would be fascinating.
The things we would do for sports. It's crazy.
I think that's a good point though, because we're talking about like parents sending like this letter, but it's like so much of community and like even there's so many dads, moms too, that like to watch sports with their kids, and like it's a fun Saturday thing where that's also gone.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Neighbor invites. Like for me, like honestly, one of the simplest things on Saturdays in Nebraska to do, low hanging fruit. Like we just got 2 new neighbors, and I could see they put up their corn ear thing, and they're Husker fans, and so in the past I would just say, hey, you're a Husker fan, why don't you guys come over, watch the game and all that kind of stuff, because it's just normal, or be out in the garage and that kind of stuff and watch the game and or listen to it. And now it feels like, what's going to replace even that low hanging fruit to like of invitation?
Husker Bible study.
Husker Bible
I was going to say a lot of wives are making to-do lists. That's what's going to replace it. I'm not doing that.
All right, let's jump into our next headline. This one comes from NBC News. This is kind of a new, I guess, government recommendation that says men should limit alcohol to 1 drink a day. Now, I mean, I think this is a maybe I'll say interesting conversation amongst Christians. I mean, we had an episode on alcohol. When was that?
Episode 7.
Way back. 007.
You're good.
Good job, Alex.
I looked it up because this week at Christ Community we're in Revelation talking about a lot lot and so I thought it was fitting.
That is fitting.
Another way to put a 7 in there.
Good job. Way to plug Revelation.
So previously, I think the recommendation had been like women 1 drink a day, men can have 2 drinks a day, and now they're cutting men back to 1.
Equalizing.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot of people personally who are just like die hard, like I gotta have, my drink every day, but I know that's a thing. I know that's a thing that exists. I don't know how many people are like looking to the federal government for their, guidance on how much to drink every day.
I don't think.
Now that they said that, I guess I'm gonna change it. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It just sounds like it's gonna be fuel for like the wife to be like, I only get 1 because
look at this article.
The federal
well, I think it gets into like the whole recommendation kind of language too, because and people have gotten into all this with masking and all that kind of stuff. How much does the government, like if you go to a restaurant and you order like a beer, at
only
what
1
point are they, are you like, well, the government said, or do they have to post this like in their, in the menu, like they have to do with like raw, undercooked food? Is there like some kind of stipulation that, like, how much do we actually recommend it that it's worth like enforcing or not? I think it's going to be a weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see that sometimes in like for like pregnant women or nursing women, you'll see those warnings, but you don't normally see like a mandated limit.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to have like a special page on a menu that's like all the fine print.
Well, you think there's probably recommendations against like, fried food, but we have, McDonald's and all those places everywhere. We're not taking those down anytime soon. So,
yeah. I think it brings up, maybe it's kind of an interesting segue into what our topic is this week about health, but I don't know how many people are seeking guidance for anything, like you said, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whatever it may be, masks. But is it something, I mean, who do you think that audience is, though, that, like, I mean, it takes this to heart and goes, yes, this is what I live by? Do you think that's important? Is that, I know it's not a mandate, right? It's a recommendation. But, like, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting, I guess. Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any strong feelings about it, or it's kind of like, it doesn't really affect me, so I don't care?
I think the people that are going to probably read it and recommend it and give the information are healthcare providers, nutritionists, things like that are going to help somebody that's coming to them maybe for nutrition or something more holistic. But like guys, girls that are like going to drink every day.
Yeah.
I just wonder, is this going to change their mind?
Right.
Or, like the people that only drink on the weekends are like, oh, 1 drink a day, going to save all 5 for Friday night.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that would say that. So
I was reading the comments under the article, and it was like, I drink once a day from, 5 to 2 a.m. And I'm like, okay, like people are just like joking about it on the article.
They've already made up their minds.
Yeah.
Great. All right. No need to stay on that topic then. We've already made up our minds. One more headline. This one comes from KATV, and it says woman celebrates 116th birthday as oldest living woman.
Wow.
This is I
Happy birthday.
I feel like Al Roker right now delivering this heartfelt news.
What was the big day?
What's that?
What was the big day? What was her?
When was her birthday?
Yeah, what was the date? Does it say?
It looks like it was Saturday.
No, but something that was interesting is she thought she was born in a different year than she actually was born in. And that just like blows my mind.
Oh, that, yeah.
She's lost track of time of...
I mean, when you're 116...
Well, no, I mean, it was like a legitimate thing. Like, she didn't actually know what year she was born in, because I guess, I don't know if she had like a birth certificate.
Oh, it wasn't just like a memory thing.
No, it was like a legitimate, like, they found it in the census, so she could actually realize, like, oh, I'm actually older than I thought I was.
It does say that she thought she was born in 1905.
Yeah.
But she was actually born in 1904.
So crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That just makes me think of like Downton Abbey. I'm like,
I bet she has some great stories.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that is crazy.
Does she talk about her diet at all? What does she eat?
I remember there was like
the Dr. Pepper.
Yes,
there's like the person that's like, I have speaking of 1 drink a day, their recipe to living like 105, I don't know, something like that was like a Dr. Pepper a day.
Yeah.
That's the Dr. Pepper they saw.
It is the most medical of drinks.
It definitely is.
It's all those secret ingredients.
Which is why there's a shortage on it that I've read about.
Oh, really?
Dr. Pepper.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Because a lot of people, I think, are turning to it in these times.
Hey, I think there's prune juice in there, so that'll keep you regular at least.
I have heard those rumors that's the mystery,
Oh, the mystery ingredient.
Nice. It's unconfirmed whether this lovely lady, Miss Ford, is a Dr. Pepper drinker or not, but it does say she has 12 children and 48 grandchildren and 108 great grandchildren.
That's amazing.
And then 120 great grandchildren.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
That's a big. Can you imagine the family reunion?
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't happen right now.
That's true.
Too many people in a room.
That is crazy.
No, that's great. That's our feel good story of the day. So
I love that.
I mean, there's hope for us all.
Happy birthday, Charlotte.
yeah. That does it for headlines. Up next, we are going to be diving into the topic of physical health and whether or not that is a spiritual issue. All right, today's topic is physical health, a spiritual issue. Is it? I don't know. I think it's a topic that the church does not always do a great job. I would say rarely does a great job addressing. We don't like to talk about it. Yet in some ways it can be not to go down the path of like, okay, someone's physical appearance is something that we can judge easily, but it is something that people do tend to judge. How they got to that point is probably much more personal of a journey than we're always willing to admit, depending on our personal experience. But So yeah, I would hope that we can kind of steer clear of that around this conversation of just being like, oh, okay, well, I can judge someone for sinning because of their body shape. Like I would hope that people could like understand that is not what we're talking about here. Just I kind of want to preface that, but it is just what we're going to be talking about. Maybe exercise or eating habits or things like that. But yeah, I mean, what's your initial kind of thoughts about the church? Maybe not necessarily their responsibility to talk about this, but like how well, maybe like what's their report card on this in everyone's eyes and over the past few years or maybe their lifetime?
Yeah, I think there's 7 deadly sins is probably something people have heard of, and that's not like actually like a list in scripture. It's taken from a bunch of different places, and like one of the popes actually was the one that I came up with this through reading scripture. And so on there, on those 7 deadly sins from Pope Gregory the First, he considered the categories of sin: pride, envy, wrath, gluttony, lust, sloth, and greed. And so I would say, like, as I've learned and been in Bible studies and grew up in the church, like probably the 2 that I have heard the least about ever are gluttony and sloth. I mean, people are like, what's sloth or gluttony? So like you hear a lot about...
Sloth is that thing that hangs in a tree and they have those...
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why I think people are like, what? Is that a sin to own one or what? But in my experience growing up, those are like 2 things we don't talk about. We're like, oh, drugs, alcohol, smoking. We pick other like sexual sins, but rarely do we talk about like the idea of gluttony or the balance there or nutrition and is this a spiritual topic? And so that's it.
That's so funny that you bring that up. I feel like growing up, like sex was a huge topic, but like food, something that's a part of my every single day, like how I'm treating my body, how I'm eating, like how healthy I am, that wasn't a topic at all. And it's just so crazy because it's like our bodies are what like house like who we are, our soul, all that kind of stuff. And like the church is not even addressing it or talking about it. When I grew up, that's not really a big thing that was being talked about. I think more and more now it is becoming a bigger topic of like whole health and just like God cares about your body. He gave it to you. He created it for you. And I think it's becoming more of a topic in churches, but I still think churches don't quite know how to navigate how to lead people in that topic either, because it is uncomfortable or some you don't know everybody's story, and I think it also really affects your mental state.
Absolutely,
your mental state and like how you feel and what you're thinking about. And I just think it's so important that we address that topic as well, because that's going to lead into so many other spiritual issues. I mean,
coming from a Pentecostal background, don't you dare come between me and my potluck. I mean, you would hear like that was always kind of a thing. Like, I mean, being a rebellious teenager, like I would hear these pastors talk about different sins, and then like their bellies barely fit behind the pulpit, and so it was so easy to just kind of be like judgy and be like, okay, well, whatever, you don't have it together either, like and you can kind of take that a very surface level, almost shallow perspective on it, but
Alex, what you're saying, it was interesting because it's like we don't really, I don't know, connect the 2 spiritually. I guess it's like maybe one of the hardest to like maybe for somebody to make that connection with how my nutrition and my physical health now somehow can connect to my spiritual health, which I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think that it does. But as you guys are talking, I'm thinking, okay, gluttony or nutrition gluttony is a sin, but it's, I don't know, it's like, it's personal to us. And it seems like almost if we start talking about like nutrition or like the way somebody looks or like how something you're going to do isn't going to affect the way you look, like that's very personal and it feels judgy. But then we're still talking about sexual sins. We're talking about other things. So that's interesting. I'm thinking why?
I think the paradox for me is how much I'm using church as capital C across the board. In the history of church, they've always been very good about pointing out very visible sin. So like for a lot of years, like divorce was one of those things where it was something that they could easily put just go, yep, that's a sin because it said so in the Bible, right? They would try to put that out there. I mean, right now, there's a lot of nuance here, and this isn't the conversation we're going to have, but it, like with homosexuality and LGBTQ plus those sorts of things, that's something that's very, like, people are very vocal about. So it's easy for the church to go, like, latch onto that and go, this is a sin. And, there's different things like that, but like something like physical health, that there can be signs, whether we're talking about obesity or slothfulness, things that are connected to that, there can be signs of that, but yet the church does not want to like really talk about that, even though it is one of those things that could be an easy thing to point out and say, oh, well, there's sin in your life.
Yeah, and physical health is a great way to also incorporate spiritual disciplines too.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot there that's untapped potential of where we could be going and helping people grow spiritually too.
And I would say gluttony isn't the only sin within physical health.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Like for me, it's like identity, like my identity in Christ and who I am. And it's not, hinging on, the things that I do, or, it might be just different sins that are coming out of that, or idolatry of like working out, like idolizing that, or, I think there's different sins that come out of your physical, experience too.
And I think food historically for the church, well, one, we live in 2020 where we have electricity and lifestyle is completely different, than and it's much faster paced and much more convenient, all of those things versus like, when the church, was around, or even 116 years ago when our friend had her when she was born in 1905, just how working
1904, sorry.
1904, sorry. How people did life was so much more active. So we live a much more sedentary life than we ever have before. And so factories and a lot of the technologies that we celebrate have actually created a more sedentary life. And so you've got to be even more intentional now to carve out that time, because it's not just a part of your life, but church history, was really built around meals. Even the Lord's Supper was actually like, Jesus didn't like say, we're going to have the Lord's fast, and that's going to be the thing that I'm going to have our last meal together and we're all going to sacrifice. But it was so ingrained around meals, the breaking of bread, the fellowship, the prayer, that was the instructions of the original church. And so much of it was around that. But even to make a meal was vastly so much more work. You just burned more calories literally than you could consume at that time. And then we've got sugars and all those kind of things that are like processed and totally a different conversation around all of this stuff. We could get into like, caffeine addiction. We don't want to talk about that in churches because we love our coffee, right? But
coffee and Jesus.
So
Stop it, Alex.
All of these things I think are kind of like the alcohol and, tobacco and all that kind of stuff that the church could easily label we're deteriorating our health. But there was like scientific, we wanted to use science and stuff like that in that kind of argument. But then when it comes to food and processed food and all that kind of stuff, and then we throw in the realities of more sedentary lives that we live, it just makes it more of a challenge as we look at scripture and we remove ourselves from that, and we figure out, what does this look like in 2020 in our lives? And
I think it's also scary because there's a lot, like what you're saying is like, there's a lot that you can get into when you start looking into your own health and what you're eating and things that, are keeping you healthy. It can go down some crazy trails, like, because there's so much coming out right now, even just like, for me, like learning about toxins or like things that are in like, my cleaning products that are like not good for me or for my body. But it's like, there's so much that it can be overwhelming that I feel like people don't even want to try sometimes, because they're just like, it's just gonna be too much. Like, I'm just gonna be overwhelmed and I don't even want to go down that path. So I know that it's just like hard for people to look at that and be like, okay, I'm gonna start taking one step at a time and slowly, work my way towar's healthier lifestyle.
I think, and to your point, Alex, I think that the issue that we're seeing now it's a new issue, really. Like, it's young. Like, it's not like we haven't had to deal with this necessarily for that many years.
Yeah.
Like probably 50 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Like just, I mean, you look at the way that like sugar was kind of marketed as like a healthy thing early on because it was fat free, and
Right.
like, you know, there's just all these, there's a lot there.
Right.
And so we're still trying to learn what it means, but it's undeniable when you look at like obesity rates in the country, and just that there is a problem, right? There is a problem, and if it's physical and spiritual, how do those things intersect? And like, can you fix the spiritual side of that, and will that affect the physical side, or is it a both and? Like, how do you approach that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have all the answers on that, but that's why we're talking. But I don't think you were asking just me, but
I was asking just you.
I think as I just looked at this more and more this week, I was just fascinated by really like food. I mean, you think of the Israelites and manna, and so much of food is actually shaping our spiritual lives towards a dependence on God. I mean, everything that we originally were able to get, crops, animals, all these kinds of things have always been something that's pointed us towards a dependence on God. If we don't have that, then we're nothing. I mean, Jesus, when he taught us to pray, give us this day our daily bread, like was literally for those people was more of a concern. Like, am I going to have food on the table? And so for us, this isn't even a thought around, am I going to have food? But it's like, what kind of food? How fast can I get that food? All of those things. And so I think it's one of those basic needs. And I think why God graced us with the Lord's Supper and teaching us that was teaching us a deeper spiritual need on our dependence on God as a provider. Jesus said, man cannot live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God in Matthew 4:4. So he was tying that even into a deeper meaning for a dependence in our lives. And we think maturity, I think especially as Americans, is to become more and more independent, when spiritual maturity is saying become more and more dependent. And so I think that's what the Lord's Supper teaches us. I think that's what the Israelites were finding out with, what is it? Manna that was coming from heaven. And so I think I've been just blown away as I just study historically how food has been used and utilized theologically in practice, and just shaping the history of the church this week. And so it's been fascinating, but it's so deeply personal. And I think that's the thing, is we can't compare apples to apples. I mean, we can't. Like literally, we can't compare apples to apples back then, because now they taste like cotton candy and we've put stuff in them. You know, I mean,
those are grapes too.
Sorry, I do not think they taste like cotton candy. For the record.
Well, and I think too, when you're talking about food, there's an aspect of necessity, because it is something that's nourishment, but then there's pleasure. And I think it's a gift, right? Like God allowed this thing that nourishes our bodies to be pleasurable. We can find pleasure in eating food, but it's when the pleasure overrides the nutrition that I think we start to run into that problem where we're just like, okay, we're just eating but besides that, emotional reasons. Right. There's like, I know, like for me personally, I grew up in a household that we ate emotionally, and I mean, like I can identify that, like, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm almost embarrassed to share this story, but I'll share it. Whatever, who cares, right? We're recording it. I should share this embarrassing story. So in 7th grade, I was homeschooled. The only year I was homeschooled. It didn't work out. Love my mom. Hated her as a teacher, though. Didn't work out. She didn't really like me as a student either, I don't think. She could not get me to do my work. I just, because I knew that it was mom, and like I could kind of just like, I had been in public school up until this point. I knew how to just get out of it pretty much. One of her tactics that we used was hanging out at a Hardee's. If you don't know what Hardee's is, it's like a Carl's Jr., but in the Midwest. And we'd hang out at this Hardee's, and she would be like, all right, you know, like, let's go get breakfast. And I remember being, this wasn't like a weekly event, but there was several times that it happened where we would be doing like our school day at this Hardee's in this booth. And it would get to the point where she'd be like, all right, if you keep going, we can stay for lunch. And that was a valuable reward to me as a child, because I wanted to stay for lunch, you know? And so it's one of those things where at some level, it's like, man, I'm like thinking of this almost as like training a dog, like to hear a sound and react because he's going to get a reward, you know? And it's like, that's kind of messed up. And it's nothing against my mom. I don't blame my mom for any of this, but it's just one of those things where like later on in life, how am I dealing with issues? Like when, you know, literally when my mom died, I was on a diet that changed my life. I lost 100 pounds. And after she died, I noticed that like I was in an emotional mess, and I gained a lot of that weight back just because of not knowing like how to manage my emotions, you know? And so it's one of those things where there's an emotional connection to so much of
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I think maybe there always has been an aspect to that, but because of what our culture allows us now to be sedentary, it makes it easier for us to not. I mean, there's guys like I look at like my dad who's almost in his 80s, and like he worked hard his whole life and he never had to think about diet. That wasn't a thing that crossed his mind. He just ate when he was hungry, and he ate what he wanted, and he went and worked, and he worked it off. But
yeah, I think the emotional connection of our society too. It's like you hear that, like, well, when you get in a breakup, like, go just buy a pint of ice cream and just eat it all, and like that'll make you feel better. And like that's just like what you grow up hearing.
That's what you give your friends when they break up with their
yeah, exactly. I mean, chocolate or ice
Ben
cream,
and Jerry's,
whatever. Right?
That's
exactly
right.
And
food is a reward,
right.
like a goal. Like, oh, if I do this, like, oh, I'll stop at Starbucks after this, or we're gonna have pizza on Friday.
Kids' sports are being ruined during COVID because they signed up just for the snacks.
Yeah,
you know, and I have to break their hearts as I coach them. I say, guys, I know you signed up for the snacks, but there's no snacks after the game.
Oh man, I might go get my Go-Gurt now.
I know.
yeah, for sure.
There's so much emotional stuff that goes beyond, and because it's a gift that God gave us to enjoy pleasure, our taste buds, all of these types of things, the way that it makes us feel, the ways that it satisfies, all of those kind of things aren't necessarily bad, because like I said, they point us to, I think, a deeper spiritual reliance on God. But I even think about my childhood growing up, and we had a lot of kids in my house, and so, you know, I didn't even realize this till years ago when I'm like always the first one done eating wherever I go, and people are always like, dude, I haven't even like taken a bite yet and you're done, and it's all awkward for them because I'm talking and they can't talk, and like I'm like, why do I do that? And it's like, because when I was if you wanted seconds as a kid, literally you had to eat fast otherwise and so for me, like that, so much of that was just pre-programmed as a kid into me. So I didn't even eat out of a hunger. Like I just ate because I wanted, seconds. And then I even remember growing up in school, there was you were like a big guy, a tough guy if you got seconds. Like at my lunch, like I remember, like if you got a second milk, or if you got two, even in high school, like as an athlete, if you got 2 slices of pizza and you ordered more, like there was like this like street cred for whatever reason that you would get. So it wasn't even about like my hunger. It was about like my identity and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, another thing that I was thinking about is like when you are changing your nutrition, it's not just about just picking a different food over another food. Like I feel like when I was growing up, we were doing soccer, we were doing gymnastics, we were doing, so we're running around all over the place, and we have to stop at a fast food restaurant. We have to stop at the McDonald's because we don't have time to go home and make dinner. And so I think it's also hard for people because you have to be less busy to be able to make dinner and sit down and have that meal.
Even meal prep.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just a question of like, would you rather have this healthier food? It's like, well, you're going to have to take time to do that, and you might have to give up some stuff that you don't want to give up.
I think all 3 of you, I just want to commend you for sharing those stories, because I think a lot of times we don't slow down and think, why do I do that? And Eric, you even sharing is like, you taking the time to think about how that played out in your life. It's like, we have to be so intentional, like if we're tying physical and spiritual together, like we want to be intentional spiritually with what we are putting into our mind, with like the time that we're spending with the Lord. And we want that same intentionality with what we're putting into our bodies. But if we don't take the time to stop and be like, hey, like I always think on Fridays, or like every day, I think I need to stop here. Like, why do I do that? Maybe that's like the first step of figuring out like what's going on.
Well, there's so many other like cultural aspects to it too. If you think, like, you look at the Depression, and we have like our parents who are kind of influenced by this and not having food. Like some of them literally like were like having faith in God to provide their next meal. But then what are the negative aspects that we've inherited from that? Like, don't even get me started on the clean your plate mentality. Like that drives me crazy when I hear parents go, clean your plate. Like that's carryover from the Depression. And it's also like not a healthy mentality to have. Right. If your body's going to tell you when you're full, right. And for a parent to be like, you need to eat all of it. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe they're full, and their body is naturally telling them, I don't want any more food right now. And if we don't let their body let them listen to that, then what are we doing to them by telling them they have to clean their plate? So there's all these like psychological things that have been carried over from generation to generation. Look at the types of foods we eat, like something like biscuits and gravy. Like that's kind of like a Depression thing, because that was like, hey, we have flour and we have some milk and water, and we can like lard, like we can like put this stuff together, and we can literally eat flour on top of flour, and it's something that's going to nourish us. But it's like these things that like, it just keeps carrying over, and it's kind of a cultural inherited thing.
Yes, and what you're saying, it just rolls down the hill. I mean, shame comes with that. Comparison comes with that. Yeah. And just like those traps that we get in when we have this ideal person that we want to be or we think we are, and we're not meeting that. And it's like, I'm not good enough, and I'm looking at you, and you're easily losing weight, or you're easily here, that, and I'm not that. And just that comparison trap that we fall into when it's like we lose sight of like who God sees us as, and that, I mean, we can, to some extent, like there are some people that can take control of their health, and there's other people that aren't. And it's not, we're all different, and we're all on the different journeys. And it's so hard to fall into that comparison trap, because my story is different than yours and yours. And it's, we can get easily caught in that trap.
I think the shame thing is another good point to make, because it's not all just like positive feelings when you eat whatever you want and get to overeat or whatever. There's a lot of shame for people who are eating certain foods, or just how they were brought up. Like, even I think about like carbs, like that is like an evil, like you don't eat carbs, like that is bad. And like just shame behind eating 2 pieces of bread instead of just 1 piece of bread. But then like growing up and realizing like what nutrition actually is, and like that I actually need carbs in my body to energize me. Like when you have knowledge about those things, the shame can kind of go, out the door a little bit. But I do think like what you grew up around and what your parents were telling you, or what your culture was telling you, that leads into how you do everything, even nutrition.
Yeah. And I think a difficult part for the church, and I think that's why I'm happy we're talking about this, is I remember, I think it's in Luke 11, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he's like, you guys are just tying these people down with burdens that they can't carry out. Like you're being super legalistic, but you're not lifting a finger to help them. And that was a rebuke that Jesus had for the Pharisees. And I think the difficult part is, how do we teach people to help? I mean, so a lot of these other sins like sexual addiction or alcohol, a lot of the things that, Jess, you do ministry with on Tuesday nights that are around addictions. Rarely do we talk about food addictions, and rarely do we, as a church, want to be willing enough to lift, the finger to help. And so, one of my hopes too is that we just don't come on here and talk about this, and someone feels that shame, or they're like, I know, because I think most people know, like if they're like, I'm just not feeling healthy, like you were saying, but it's how to get out. It's like, who's throwing me a ladder to help me get out? Who's sticking their hand down and helping pull me out of this? Because like I said, again, this independence thing that we try to create in our culture is most of us can't do this alone. There has to be some kind of accountability. That's why gyms, all that kind of stuff are function, I think, best with some kind of accountability and community around them. And but then we also have, this is being sold to us. Like literally, I think I read like $72 billion industry, the diet, industry. Yeah. Or trillion, I don't know, a lot of money is spent
multi-trillion
every year on selling us images and pills and diets and fads and recreating new ones all around this desire inside of us that that says I'm not good enough. There's something more. There's something better. I can delay death. I can cheat death. I can beat death. I want to be like Uncle Rico from whatever that Napoleon Dynamite and live my past life and look like I'm, you know, so it goes into so many different areas of our life that we're trying to like turn back the clock and live in a way that we weren't. And so there's some of that is motivated in healthy ways, but some of it's really motivated in negative ways. But if we don't learn and to talk about it, like, and be able to have conversations around this stuff,
and
difficult.
I think where it's like it differs too for everybody is that there's the reasoning behind it too. Like, what's the benefit to me getting healthier or not getting healthier? How can I go about it? How can I approach it? Like, for me personally, like I'm typically like fall into the people pleaser category. So like if I'm always like trying to do that thing that like gets people, and it's not healthy, but it's like, oh, okay, well, I want them to like me, right? So I want to do the thing that like makes, and that's like a self-serving issue. And I know, like I mentioned earlier, that I had gone through like a diet plan where I lost a lot of weight, and the reason partially that was successful, like looking back on it, was because I had to meet with someone every week, and there was this accountability that, like, for me, it was terrifying to let this random person I didn't know down for not losing the weight. And so I stuck with it, you know, and so that's why it worked for me. That's not going to work for everybody, you know, and it's, but now that that's taken out of the equation, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not able to attain that because I'm not pleasing anyone, you know, I'm not accountable to someone. So I think that accountability thing is a big deal. But it's just so, that's the thing, is like you it's that judging a book by its cover. We can't just like go and say, okay, well, this person is just obviously lazy and they don't care or whatever. Like, I think you need to know people's stories before you can actually understand where they're at.
And not even like, you don't have to know everybody's story personally, but just have the maturity and the sense of, I don't know their story, so I can't judge them, and don't go there. Yeah. Like, stop yourself from that. That is a good discipline.
Yeah.
For sure. For me, like, can we talk a little bit about physical fitness, moving your body?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You brought it up. We're talking about it.
Why? Because do you want to talk about it?
I got the kettlebell here.
Listen, I'm thinking about this because for me, I was like always like certain like size 6, size 8, and then like having kids, like I can relate to a lot of people that like the postpartum body is like not awesome for everybody. And you know, it affects like the things we've talked about, like shame and identity, comparison, all those things. Like, so if anybody's listening, like, I hope that no one feels judged by this, because like we've talked about things from our past, but also like I'm sure all of us have like current physical struggles that you know, we're like, okay, this isn't perfect and this isn't great. But something for me that gave me hope was to move my body. I chose CrossFit. I'll drop that in there. But I think the point is just to like move your body and to find something that works for you. And I think, like, I don't know, I'd be curious how Jesus has met you in those moments of moving your body, because I think he does. And for me, it's given me a lot of hope. For me, it's one of the things I've told myself over the past 3 years is, and I put it up on my wall, and it's baby steps still move you forward. So it's like, I don't have to compare myself to somebody else. I don't have to meet this huge goal. It's like, I'm making a decision for myself and moving forward. And I think that when we make it, like, it's the same thing spiritually of choosing to make a commitment to that. It's like, am I reading the word, and how are all these things, am I choosing to incorporate all that into my walk with the Lord? What do you guys think about that? Thoughts? I have more I could say too.
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about like exercise too, of just like what culture thinks exercise, or what I grew up thinking exercise should have been. Like, I was like, okay, cardio all the way. Like, I got to run 10 miles a day if I'm going to like look good. Like, that's what you got to do, and like all this stuff. And and you don't want to lift weights, like you're gonna get like huge, like a guy, like that is not okay. And so I was like running, I was doing like HIIT exercises, and I hated working out. I literally hated it. I was like, why am I doing this? This is not fun. I don't enjoy this. I hate it. And then eventually I kind of started like going and like doing weights a little bit more, and I was like, oh, I actually enjoy this. Like this is fun. Like I can see like progress, and I just think that's another big thing. Like you don't have to do a certain workout and it's like that's the workout that you have to do. It's like find something that you actually enjoy, and like even if it's just walking for 30 minutes, like that is great. Like God,
what if you don't enjoy any of it?
Hey, you probably burn a lot of calories moving your thumbs a lot when you're doing your video games.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have to walk to the fridge to get food.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. But I think God wants us to enjoy like our physical bodies and like what he's given us, and enjoy like seeing like, wow, God let me, he's allowing me to run 10 miles, and I love that I can run 10 miles, and like enjoying that is like a huge part of just like worshiping God, I think, of just like, oh, God gave me this body and I'm able to use it, and that's an amazing thing, and I want to worship God for that.
Well, and Paul talks about that spiritually, but it relays it out of a physical thing in Philippians. Like we train our bodies, and maybe you don't enjoy the training, but you enjoy the benefits of the training, so you can move and you can be with your kids and do things that you like to do and live a life that's longer and more prosperous. I know, like you were saying, I mean, probably my biggest insecurity in life is physical image. Like, and for me, like I've got a brother who's literally a model, and so he literally, like,
we're laughing because we know.
Yeah. And for me, I've realized more and more in my life, like having that, like our bodies are just built different.
Yeah.
And he just has a frame that's different than mine. But like, even subtly, you would get comparisons from people in my life. Why don't you look like that? Or I'd play those comparisons to myself and in my life. And I grew up playing sports. Like I just did. I was a gym rat. And so I didn't ever think about what I ate and things like that. And then I remember getting married, getting my first job. It wasn't like hours, a week just of my life weren't dedicated to running around in sports. And when we were having our first kid, I remember the whole cultural thing of like, eat whatever you're craving. And so my wife would do that and I would do that with her. That's what good husbands do. And like, I remember like, 9 months later, like I'd gained a lot of weight.
That sympathy weight.
Yeah, the sympathy weight. And then I remember even like being like upset that my wife like lost it quicker. Obviously she had the baby and then her body's even different. And so realizing the differences and the comparison trap that we can get ourselves into and why I'm doing this as well. And I think one of the things spiritually, like we have to realize we were bought with a price. Like scripture tells us, like physically, our physical bodies. We were
physically bought with the price.
Yeah.
And we do have a mandate, a call in our lives to be able to steward our lives and all that kind of stuff. And that I think there's a physical stewarding in our lives that we have to have. But there's also a helper. And so there's a fruit of the Spirit called self-control. And there's a lot of fruit of the Spirit, but I think self-control is one of those things. I think there's a lot of people feel like I cannot get this done on my own. And there is, and it's easier said than done, to deny the things we long for and we crave, especially when we've created these patterns, but we're not helpless. We have a great hope that there is a literally a spirit living inside of that physical body, and it blows our minds to wrap all that around. But like we have a helper that will help us have self-control and help us train our bodies, help us train our spirits and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's good news for us to rely on that how good is God that he would even give us that. But self-control isn't easy.
For me, one of the things that I'll do sometimes before I work out is I'm praying. If I'm having like a hard day, I just pray. I'm praying right before, or I'm bringing those emotions up to God, because exercising releases that stress. So it's like my emotions with the Lord meet that stress that I'm going to work out, and it changes things. I asked some people in our gym, like I told them we were having this conversation, and I'm like, what? It's not just physical. Like, what is this that working out, even moving your body, what does that help? And so many people said anxiety, sobriety. There's so many things that are tied into our physical health. And one person said, it changes the story that we've been told about ourselves. Like it helps change that story of like, I was clumsy, but I'm walking a mile, or I was clumsy, or I'm this, or I'm never going to be this. And it helps us rewrite our story when we start even incorporating, if we're making decisions about nutrition or being physical, it helps us rewrite that script that we have in our head, those lies that the enemy has taken, that we've attached to our identity. And it helps us rewrite that in different ways.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, like we've said it multiple times. It's personal. It's very personal. And I think when you go back to even like the moving and the exercise and stuff like that, like, I mean, my perspective in that is like, I do not enjoy exercise at all. You can't name an exercise that I want to go do. Even when I lost 100 pounds, I didn't exercise once. It was all diet. And so there again, it's like, okay, well, people could have looked at me now, between now and then, and gone like, oh, well, you were healthy then. And I probably was healthier then, but it was also not like I wasn't going to work out every day. I just was limiting what I ate. And so it's one of those things where it's so different for everyone. The experience is so different.
I agree.
And it's just like, I don't think that we're here to give you the antidote to it. It's just like let's have this conversation. Let's put it out there and say, you know what? Like, we need to admit that these, especially when it comes down to if people are being critical of others over other sin in their lives, and we can't address our own sin. Like, that's the thing, is like, maybe this is something that you've been like, I'll be very open about it. Like, I know that there are shortcomings, like within, like, enable, like my own ability to fight off cravings, or to fight off like the types of food choices that I make, or the fact that I'm not motivated to exercise. And like, those are things where I fall short every day. But I think that like, this is just, it helps us get over that hurdle of, oh, well, I don't have any sin in my life. You know, like this could be one of those things where it's like, this is maybe something that you need to identify and like, thank God for grace at this point, in our lives, that we have some grace as we try to figure this out and walk through this together.
Yeah, and I think it's like you're saying, your health and fitness journey is so different than everyone else's, and so is your spiritual journey. Like, every person is different, and I think it's just a really cool opportunity for us to invite God into our health and fitness journey, because when I did that was life-changing for my spiritual walk with the Lord, because I was able to give him different things, shame or frustration or body image. I was able to give him things that I never would have been able to allow God to work in or work on if I never invited him into my physical aspect of life or my nutrition aspect of life. And I just think it takes you on a different, to a different place with the Lord when you're allowing him to come into that area of your life. It's just really cool.
Yeah. One quick question I have, because maybe just that's practical, is I think it's like, what level do you say, like, hey, I noticed something about someone maybe physically, like, hey, I noticed you were a lot more healthy at one point, and one of the physical signs is, and sometimes you see that in like maybe a friend, or man, I think one of the hardest places to talk about this is with your spouse. Yeah. How would you say, like, how would you go about, like, what's the relational equity you have to have with a person to start to have this conversation? And how would you go about, like, having that conversation? Because it's out of a genuinely motivated love and care for that person, maybe even for their family. Like I've got parents that are getting older, and sometimes there's like a nudge from one of the parents, be like, you need to talk to the other parent about doing this because they came back from the doctor and they said their cholesterol's too high, or whatever. So what are those relationships? What spaces do we have that in, would you say?
I think it, like, culturally, that's so hard, because you can't, like, even within tight-knit friend groups, the person who starts losing weight in that group, like, everyone's like publicly very congratulatory and like, oh, good job, you're doing so good, but like secretly they're hating themselves because they're not losing the weight. And then you go out and you socially eat. So it's like, hey, everyone's going out and like, oh, I got the salad because I know that's what I need to eat is a salad, and everyone has to make a big conversation about it. And then that puts the person who's eating the salad in this weird, awkward space where they're just like, okay, yeah, I didn't get the sandwich, I didn't get all the carbs, I didn't get the fries because I'm trying to do better, but now you guys are all making a big deal about it, and I feel socially like pressured into not eating that way because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable.
Salad. Wow.
Yeah. And so there's all these things where it's like it's just so much more because like having those conversations, like people aren't gonna. Here's the thing is like, I know for me personally, I don't make the change until I make the mental change. Like I'm not going to make the physical change until I mentally and hopefully we've realized now spiritually made that shift to go, okay, this is something I need to do for me and my family and those I love. Like you have to just go for it and commit to it. But it's so hard when you have all these other, external things that are like weighing you down because it's socially awkward to like, for me, it's like, I don't want to be the one who's like, yeah, I don't want to eat this right now. And then everyone all of a sudden is changing their whole routine because of you. And then you feel like you're causing this rift in your social circles, and it's like that's a huge weight that you feel sometimes, and it's like it's almost embarrassing. And so I don't think those are one of the things, like for me personally, that's really frustrating. It's just like, I don't know, like maybe I'm just eating a salad today because I don't feel like eating the other thing. Like I'm not trying to diet, I'm just eating a salad, and so like maybe don't make a big deal about it next time.
So for you, really quickly, what on the reversal of the question, who would you allow to like speak that into your life? I guess
eat a salad. Someone tell me to eat a salad.
No, like who would you allow to like say, "Hey, Eric, I think like this is a spot of your life that
a growth area."
As a growth area.
Like, oh, you mean like I think you're getting. Your pants aren't fitting.
Yeah, like who? I don't think I say it that like aggressively, but just noticing.
The most loving
hey,
way
quarantine has been hard on all of us. Okay, Alex.
Well,
I'm just saying, some of us.
And I am curious because I think probably all of us, it's a different person.
I think you bring up the spouse thing. I would listen to my wife for sure, and I think a spouse though. It's even harder for them because you live with them, right? And you're both kind of in the same habits. I think there are times where you'll see that like go one way, shift really, like really drastically. But like your spouse, like I would change a lot for my spouse because I love them immensely. I love her more than anything, and so like of course if she's like, hey, this is a problem, like but I do. I think it's a friend. It's like a close friend, someone who you care about and trust, like if they really saw it. But I don't know, like even for me, like it would be really hard for me to go talk to even a close friend about it if I thought it was really an issue, because it is such a personal, and like they're just going to immediately feel attacked. Like no matter what, it's going to feel like an attack.
Yeah, and that's partly why I'm asking the question of all of us, because I think we have to talk about it to like, how do we navigate it?
So, I think I was going to say like with not just with this, but with other things, I think it just starts with like your own vulnerability of like your own struggles, because the reality is like we're not all perfect with our nutrition and our fitness. Like I am struggling, or body image or anything. Like I have things that I'm struggling with right now today, and like I could easily go to my friends and just be like, hey, like I'm just like really struggling, with how I'm viewing myself today. I feel like I just don't look good, and I feel like, I need to lose 10 pounds, or like that's just how I feel, and just kind of put that out there. And I feel like when you open up with vulnerability, other people immediately feel their walls come down. They're not really like defensive, like, oh, this is about me, but then it's kind of like it opens up that conversation for, oh yeah, you know what, I've been feeling that way too, or I've
it's good.
I think just being vulnerable with your own like nutrition and fitness first really helps the other person open up and start to think about, oh, how do I feel about that, or have I allowed God to come into that area of my life too, or whatever. But I think with my husband, I probably am a little overly judgmental on what he eats and like what he's putting in his body, and now I'm like, oh man, I'm probably like shaming him a lot because he looks great, he's like super got all the muscles, looks great, but he eats like crap, and so I'm always like, you are gonna
wash
die.
Your laundry on his abs,
like exactly.
That's awesome.
TMI.
It's like one of those things though too, like if you're the skinny friend and you're complaining about needing to lose weight,
right,
it's like, oh, shut up. Go away. Like that's the thing. That's like all that stuff is like, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it is like socially, it's
is that our view of health?
That's the body image is king.
Right.
If you appear to be the thinnest in the group, and you're like, oh, I get my love handles, oh, like I just can't, and it's like, oh, give me a break. Like it's hard because everyone else is like struggling with their own things, and you might be the person who has the ideal body type.
Yeah. And we haven't even gotten to eating disorders, how like that could be a big thing. How about you, Jess?
I was just thinking that I have a friend that, I mean, I feel like, and women, I think men do this too, like I'm so physically aware of myself in a group of friends, or like, I don't know, when we're saying like culture fits us into this mold, like I'm very aware of myself, and I don't necessarily need somebody else to tell me that. Like you're saying. So when you ask the question, Alex, I'm thinking, unless I'm paying you to like give me nutrition advice, like I don't really
Shut your mouth.
Well, no, and it's because I think like being aware of like, I'm just very sensitive to like how other people might feel. So I was thinking the same thing that you said, Rachel, of just being vulnerable, I think invites that closeness, and that's how you know who is going to be in that circle. Is if you're vulnerable with them and they're vulnerable with you. That's how you find the people that can speak into your life and speak truth into you. And then if you're paying someone
to tell you
like your coach, or like a coach, or a nutritionist,
for sure.
That's good.
If we're looking like for like a clean cut.
Yeah, I think, they do think it's a big part of discipleship and having those conversations around our disciplines and, physically, spiritually, all that kind of stuff.
I don't want to skip over what you said about eating disorders, though, because I think that that's really important for us judging people. Like, I mean, the trigger happy people on Facebook that are just so willing to judge, we need to be conscientious. I'm speaking to myself. Too, of what we're saying about people, the conversations that we're having, who knows what we could be triggering in somebody else because we're choosing to like join in on a conversation with somebody. And I was thinking, I have a friend that is like, that I was talking to today about like how I felt personally, physically, and she's smaller than me, and I even said that, but it's like in the same breath, like I can have a conversation with her and us not have the same struggles because I know that she's going through something differently than me. So I try to be hyper aware of how I might be making somebody feel, like the skinny friend, or because that's a way of, we label people. So like what are like we could go around and label all of us, like maybe people have they
already have notebooks they've been documenting.
I think probably that's the difference too, is that self-awareness is at an all-time high. I mean, consider mirrors, and how often did people see themselves like 200 years ago? How often did people see themselves 100 years ago? Now you see yourself on your phone screen, and you got the angle just wrong, and you're like, oh,
every time you accidentally open the selfie cam
on my chin, or my kid took a picture, wow, I'm looking at, and so
that's why people wear their masks down there, right? To hide the double chin.
Yes.
Well, and even ideal body image has changed over time. Like I saw some kind of article talking about the ideal body image of women. It showed each decade what the ideal body image was, and it was just like all over the place. Like one year it was just like stick skinny, the next year it was like tiny hips and like
curvy,
or and it's like we're just like trying to follow this trend up and down all over the place, and it's like the reality is, what is like, why are we trying to chase this? Because we're never going to get to it, and it's going to change in the next 10 years what people think.
Even culturally, like large people were considered wealthy in the past, where now large people are considered more in the poverty scale. Like, so it's like these things just change. And
I'll be very vulnerable right now. So when I got asked to join this podcast, I was like, people are going to see me. Like, and people can judge that, and people can look at me and have an opinion, but it's like, that's one aspect, that's not how, and it's just like, it was another reason I said yes to doing this, because it's like, I had to choose to put where my value was, and it's not in how I look or like how somebody else views me. It's in like how God views me. Mm-hmm. It's in the truth that God tells me who I am in him. Mm-hmm. And the truth is we're sharing little stories today, but nobody knows our stories and our walks and like how hard we're working, you know?
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things to remember as far as identity is Jesus' baptism moment. Like Jesus was baptized by his cousin, and the words that God said, you know, the God the Father said to Jesus is, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." Mm-hmm. This is before Jesus started his ministry. This is before Jesus did anything, you know, that we know Jesus for, you know? And so I think, to me, I have to catch myself as, am I working for approval or am I working out of approval? You know, and so I think even physically, a lot of places we can, and when we work out of approval, it's all of a sudden I can get it done. I actually have the power inside of me because my identity is rooted there. I'm not working towards an identity. I'm working out of an identity. And so for anybody listening, man, you are approved. Amen. God loves you. There's not like something you have to do to earn it. Yeah. You get to do it because of his good grace, and he's given you an opportunity and a body and life and lungs to breathe and work out of that.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
All right. There's nothing else to be said after that. Thanks, Alex, for landing that plane.
Mic drop.
I mean, there is a lot to be said about it. You know, there's a lot more we could talk about. There's a lot more that we probably, you know, someone's probably thinking, oh, why didn't they mention this or mention that?
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of time to get into all of that. I think going out, you know, for people, you know, just, I think heed those words that Alex just said, and also just remember that you don't know people's stories. So when you think you know and you think they can do better, you know, maybe they can, but you don't know, you know, like just keep that in mind. And yeah, I think, I don't know. It's one of those things, like it's deeply personal to even me, Jess, and I feel you. Cause like, even when we started this podcast, I think like I probably dropped like 40 pounds knowing I was going to come on here and like, you know, practically like, oh, I'm so nervous. I'm going to be on camera and like that stuff. And so it's like, even as a guy, I think sometimes you are told that you shouldn't worry about your body image. Like, but
Dead
like,
bod.
yeah, like it's fine, whatever. And I think that's a lie too, because guys care immensely about that stuff, even though. So wherever you are, you know, in this journey, and it can be a roller coaster sometimes, like, I mean, it sounds cliche, but just try to love yourself too. You know, like God loves you, like God loves all his children, you know. All right. I think that does it for today. If you know, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody here for sharing your stories and being vulnerable. This is definitely a very challenging topic to tackle, and I think we did a decent job for our first time, but hopefully it leads to more conversations like this in the future. If you're listening, you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, concerns, or maybe you have a topic idea, you can email us at podcast@cccomaha.org, or you can reach out to us on social media at cccomaha. We really appreciate your support, but until next time, we'll talk to you then.